Good morning. My name is Derry, and today I want to talk about fight scenes. Now, I love a great showdown. I grew up watching superhero films, Spider-Man slugging Green Goblin or Doc Ock. It's a very exhilarating moment, and it comes in many forms. Many of the shows I watched, such as anime, made their entire series based off the appeal of conflict. And it's invigorating, even today. You sit down and watch a good fight scene and you're completely enamored. Your adrenaline begins going high as you watch these creative ways characters just slug each other relentlessly. However, as I've grown older, I've become a lot more picky and a lot less patient with my fight scenes. Let me give you a bit of a history lesson. Long, drawn-out fight scenes isn't foreign to the genre of anime, especially in shonen. Some of the titanic figures, such as Dragon Ball, would notoriously end off an episode with characters yelling. And, starting the next episode with a lengthy recap, it would just continue on the same fight for episodes on end. Series such as Naruto would love to just sprinkle in endless arrays of flashbacks to things that you've seen quite frequently. On top of that, sometimes even daring to throw in filler to fluff out the fight scene and create more of a barrier between the anime and its source material. You see, prolonged fight scenes, to me, is very distasteful. I was watching Demon Slayer, trying to give it an earnest shot. I enjoyed season 1 and I got pretty far into it. Although on one of the latest seasons, there was a fight scene that took literally half the season. I'm talking a 12 episode runtime and 6 to 7 of those episodes were dedicated to the same fight. That to me is disgusting. I do not want to see people just fighting relentlessly like that for that long. My faith and trust in the writing and the characters just escapes me, and I get ultimately bored. And, it happens everywhere. Jujutsu Kaisen is another great example of a wonderful fighting anime, where a bunch of characters are in internal combat. Every single arc is just fight, 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 and it's pretty fun. It's really nice to try to understand the logistics of the power system set in place and watch characters try to outsmart each other and make do with what they can. Some people are just awful matchups, and watching everyone rank together, it's almost like every single not every single episode, but every single arc is a tournament gauntlet where characters are just going through it. But even then, there's events like the Shibuya incident, which I won't go into detail for any of these arcs or anything, so I don't spoil it, but, it's an entire arc that takes place over one night of very, very, very vicious fights. And I didn't exactly get bored of it in the same way I got bored of Demon Slayer's half an arc of just one fight, because there was a lot more better balancing of character stamina. But at some point, it did get a little ridiculous for me as well. And that's when I realized maybe I'm just losing my patience for these long, drawn-out fights. On one hand, it's really cool. It's really exciting. You see the hero go down multiple times, but for some reason, they're able to just get back up and say, no, I'm not done yet. You can't take me down. That's really awesome. That's really cool. But it happens a lot, doesn't it? And when it happens over and over, it just really pulls me out of my immersion. And that's not something I'm particularly keen of when I'm watching a show. I really like it when the fights are a lot more condensed. I like it when the fights feel like it's serving a really strong purpose. And while I do enjoy having the flashy spectacles, the ingenuity of using diverse power sets to really take advantage of a scenario, I also enjoy moving on to the next bit of the story. I don't think fighting necessarily needs to be a end-all be-all medium to progress heavy plot points. It should be a very, powerful climactic resolution that has been built up to. I think combat usually is most satisfying when it's reserved as a last resort, and on top of that is treated as this giant event. Combat is dirty. It's nasty. Your feelings are being let out, and characters are going into it not usually with the intent of having a fun time. They're doing it to resolve something they couldn't use their words for. Some characters are a lot more hasty in that regard. They don't like using words at all. They just talk with their hands. And I'm not saying like sign language or gang signs or anything like that. I mean just really scuffing people up. You know, violence is their only outlet. And if that's the only way they can communicate if that is the only way that they can communicate their feelings, I do think that's interesting and has a place. However, during these long drawn-out fight scenes, there's also an enormous amount of talking, an enormous amount of padding, which usually doesn't elevate the scene for me. I get really bored. It gets really dry for me. It's a lot easier to accept these drawn-out fights in a video game where, you know, that's the gameplay loop. You're just fighting for your life, and talking and cutscenes kind of come secondary most of the time. But when you're exploring a medium, right? Exploring media, whether it be a novel, a comic, a manga, a show, a movie, it can be really boring to sit through your 100th series that just has a drawn-out fight that seems to never end. Why should I care about whether your protagonist can stick through the fight if it feels like they're immortal now? No matter how many times they get hit, they won't go down. That is not interesting anymore. I know that Tanjiro is going to be fine at the end of the day. I know that his thick head is going to get him out of any situation, right? I know that there's going to be another Senzu for Goku to pull out and get a power-up. There's twists and turns in the fight that keep them compelling throughout these series, yes. However, it's so repetitive for me now. If there's an elongated fight, I'm losing my interest. I like it a lot snappier and personal. Now, I also just want to state that this is in regards to these extremely drawn-out fights that are half a season or longer, right? A multiple episode saga, a multiple chapter saga of a single drawn out moment. And it can very much extend beyond fighting, but with combat, that's where it's a lot more pressing to me, because fights are usually an endurance match. And when everyone has infinite endurance, it's a marathon I'm not going to want to see to the end. Alright, well, I'm sorry to have such a complainy, naggy topic for today. It was just some thoughts of combat I wanted to share. I hope you all enjoyed anyways, and I want to know what your thoughts are on fight scenes and how they're handled within different mediums. Alright, well, my name is Derry. Have a good day. Take care. Goodbye.